This is supposed to be our rainy season, flooding and high flows. However, we continue to talk about drought. That will continue in the March edition of the Water Resources Outlook. Our plan is to address the drought and what our flood potential is through April. There are a wide range of conditions across the southeast, but the trend is toward dryness at this point, and so we deal with the drought in the middle of our main recharge or flood season, depending on your perspective. Jeff will set the stage as he discusses the climatology.
So looking at the last 30 days percent of normal, which basically encompasses February, we see most areas in the orange and red shades, meaning these areas have only seen about half of the rainfall they typically see. The only areas of the southeast that have seen normal rainfall in the past month have been down across the southeastern corner of Alabama there, with those shades of yellow and even some green, as well as some of the across the Florida Panhandle. What is typically a pretty wet month for the southeast has been fairly dry, limiting flooding and helping drought conditions to ease back into the picture in some areas. And the reason I say ease back into the picture is because January was fairly wet for some areas, and this helped alleviate drought conditions that developed late last fall. But now February has been pretty dry, and drought conditions may begin developing, especially as we move into the warmer weather months. So here is the percentage of normal of precipitation for the year to date. And what this highlights is that we had a pretty wet January across many areas of Alabama and Georgia, as you see highlighted in the green shades. Across the Carolinas and the Florida Peninsula, dryness has been seen in both January and February. As far as USGS stream flow, we see the past 28-day average here, and stream flow is well below normal across the mountains and the headwaters, and below normal in the Piedmont region as well as coastal North Carolina. Normal stream flow across coastal Georgia and Alabama. The Florida Peninsula is a mix, but stream flows generally are usually low this time of year anyway. So we look at how stream flow has changed over time within some states here, and we see in both Alabama and Georgia how stream flow had come back to normal with the wet weather in December and January, but dryness in February has sent stream flow levels plummeting. Same with the Carolinas. Note how the Carolinas in both graphs, that big jump last September, of course that was Hurricane Matthew, and look at how that kept them from dropping to well below normal levels in late fall as in Georgia and Alabama. So where do we stand with drought? We see severe to extreme drought conditions currently across northern Alabama and southern Appalachian area, highlighted there with the orange and red colors, and now at least abnormally dry conditions across the Carolinas. And compared to the last time we talked with you all in our last Water Resources Outlook, we see drought has spread for many areas, as you see there in the Carolinas and Florida. This will be something we will have to watch closely as we come out of the primary recharge period and go into the warmer months, especially considering the dry weather and the warmer temperatures we have been having recently. Many areas, the vegetation has already begun to come out of winter dormancy, and Todd will talk more on this in the forecast. And then going from drought to flood, here we have our river flood climatology, and we are close to week 9 or 10, and this is usually a very active time for river flooding in our region, but right now we have none. Usually we have at least a dozen points in flood in our region. Rainfall events have been limited in February. Will they be limited in March? Todd will talk more on this.
Okay, let's take a look at the forecast for the southeast. On Friday, we'll see a cold front moving into the area, but we're not expecting it to bring much in the way of precipitation to the southeast U.S. Behind the front, we will be in an area of high pressure, which will take us through the weekend. We'll begin the midterm period still under high pressure, but a cold front is expected to be moving across the Midwest during this period, and this front will bring our next chance for widespread precip as it pushes southeastward into our area. The 7-day precipitation forecast shows rain associated primarily with the front that we're expecting in the midterm period. The long-term outlook is for below normal precip across much of the area, mainly because we can expect high pressure behind that front that we saw in the midterm.
Trying to describe the drought in the southeast can get very complicated. There are numerous ways to look at it. objective information, such as departure from normal rainfall or stream flow compared to normal, are great, but don't always tell the whole story. Here we have the crop moisture index. This is an indicator of short-term dryness, and specifically how it relates to agriculture. This shows most of the area in the slightly dry to favorably moist category, which likely means that the areas around the southeast in this designation are good for planting right now. This graphic and the conditions it describes can change very quickly. However, the long-term Palmer Drought Index describes abnormal wetness or dryness over a period of months or years. This does not change as quickly and describes a different aspect of the drought in the southeast. Our river models try to handle all these situations. Sometimes they do better than others. This is why we need to be very careful as we come out of drought when we make a forecast. And users need to monitor the change. Depending on intensity and duration, a situation can change very quickly as rain soaking the ground can become runoff. We will be doing our next water resources outlook in 2 weeks and will continue this discussion. But now it's on to the ENSO conditions. And neutral conditions is what we are looking at for the rest of spring. Once we get to summer, we could be approaching El Niño conditions. So what does that mean for our forecast? That is very difficult to tell. Our long-range models are not indicating one way or another. Therefore, we have equal chances of above normal, near normal, and below normal rainfall for the month of March. And this continues for the seasonal forecast from March through May. Neutral ENSO conditions make it difficult to lean one way or the other, and it will continue through the summer. One thing to add, the forecast does show continued above normal temperatures for the whole period from March through August. With that, we issued our spring flood outlook this week, and this is how we describe that risk. Below normal risk for all of the southeast except for an area along the Gulf Coast in Alabama and Florida. Drought seems to be our bigger risk due to the fact that if we don't receive recharge rains in the coming 4 to 6 weeks, the drought could intensify very quickly, moving from spring into summer. So the bottom line, in the short term, it really does kind of look like below normal rainfall. I know the Climate Prediction Center's hinting at equal chances of above normal, near normal, and below normal, but just based on this is our wettest month of the year, and we're not seeing a whole lot of systems approaching in the next 2 weeks or so, it would be really, really difficult to get to near normal for the month for much of the southeast. As for the long term, the southeast looks, well, near normal as summer nears, so we'll have to see as we get into April and May. April is one of our driest months of the year, so we wouldn't expect to see as much rain during that time, but it is something that we'll have to watch, and even normal rainfall will start to show deficits as we get into April, May, and June. Since we did not record a water resources outlook in February, you get a bonus one in March. We plan to have a water resources outlook in the middle of the month on March 16th. So look forward to that, and we will talk to you later in the month.